Hi guys, welcome to our book club. Today will be the third session for our experts level, The Turn of the Screw, a book written by Henry James. Today this video will cover from chapter 11 to chapter 15, so let's just start. As I was telling you in the introduction of this video, today we will cover from chapter 11 to chapter 15, but before that let's just have a very quick overview about what happened in the story so far. So at the very beginning we have this group of people that they are sharing some spooky stories, and among them there is an old man who says, "Oh, I have a letter from my sister governess, and in this letter there is the spookiest story ever because there are two children involved, and I want to share the story with you, so listen to me." And because of the letters, we know that this story is about a governess who was looking for a job. She found a job in a newspaper, and when she was in contact with the person who was looking for a person for this, like a teacher, he has a very weird condition because like whatever it happens, she needs to take care of these two kids and not contact her for any reason. So before saying yes to the job, she traveled to London in order to meet the headmaster and also to know more details about, like the condition or whatever. And well, the details we know is that the parents of these kids passed away recently in a trip, and well, this headmaster is his uncle. He needs to take care of them, but he really he don't care about them, so that's why he's looking for a governess, for an institutrice. And the condition is that whatever it happens with them, whatever it happens in the house where they are, she doesn't need to contact the headmaster. He really don't care about them. So the governess is a little bit overthinking because like that is weird. At the end of the day they are family, but it was good money, so she say yes. When she traveled to this place that is called Bly, and she found out that it's a beautiful place and that the little girl she will take care of, it's super beautiful. She is very sweet, she's lovely, she's very cute, she's blonde, she has, I don't know if it's blue eyes, but she has beautiful eyes. And well, everything like seems to be nice, to be well. And little by little, like she's getting used. But before the little boy arrived to the house, she receives a letter from the headmaster saying that the little boy was rejected from school and that she needs to take care of him full time. So that's it. She, cannot ask anything about the boy because, like at the end of the day, that was the condition. And well, she asked Mrs. Bruce, that is this woman who is taking care of the house. And well, Mrs. Bruce told her that she doesn't need to worry about anything because Miles is a very good boy, and that probably like school was wrong because he was really really well behaved. Anyways, when she finally met Miles, oh yeah, by the way, the little girl's name is Flora. When she finally met Miles, it's the same, like with Flora. She fell in love with him because he is well behaved, he's polite, he's beautiful. It's like if the governess had two kids. Like she thinks about them, not as her kids, but like if I like have kids one day, probably like I would like to have kids like them. And well, like little by little, while she is getting used to the kids and to the place and stuff, something weird start happening. Because in her way, like this house, there are a lot of nature around it, so she likes going for walks. And during like a walk, she saw a guy who was in a tower, and in the next moment the guy is not there anymore. So she is not like scared at the beginning, but she is overthinking about it. And the second time she was at night, like walking, just verifying that everything was closed, and suddenly she saw someone through the window. It was on the other side, very, very close to the house. So she, even if she's scared, she ran outside in order, like maybe it's a stalker, or maybe it's, like someone else who wants to enter the house and my kids are in danger. And well, she ran, but there was nobody. So she told everything to Miss Gross, and Miss Gross, she doesn't want to share a lot of information, but like she says something like, oh yeah, like because of your description, I can tell that this guy was the ex-driver, the headmaster ex-driver, because he left him here in order to take care of the kids, and well, he's dead. So the governess is a little bit scared because, like he is dead. His name, by the way, is Peter Quinn. And later on, we know that one way he was walking on the street and he slipped, he hit his head, and he passed away. So, like these ladies overthinking about the situation. They don't mention the word ghost, but we can feel that probably he is a ghost. And then, she has a third encounter, but this time it's not a man, it's a woman. And this woman seems to look at Flora. So the governess is scared because she found out that maybe these ghosts are not because coincidence, that they are, like after the kids. So she needs to protect them. She feels not probably like a hero, but she says even she jokes about it, that she's in the right quarter because she's like 20 something. And well, later on we have that, like Mrs. Gross and this governess, they are sharing information, like the little bit the governess is overthinking and the ideas and everything, and the little information Mrs. Gross is sharing with her. So we know that the woman is the previous governess, like the former governess, the person who was working before her, and that also she's dead. One day after she was working for a year, she went to her hometown in order to spend or to visit her family, and then she never returned. So the headmaster later on told them that, well, she was dead. And that's it. That's what we know so far. But also, like the kids start behaving a little bit weird. One day, well, one night, the governess is reading, and before going to sleep, she wants to check that everything is closed. So she's walking, she's verifying, and when she returns to the room, she doesn't see Flora in her bed. So she saw her that, like she was looking at the window, but also she was trying to hide, like she was behind the curtain. And well, the governess is very brave because even if she's scared, she continues. And well, like she's asking Flora, like, hey, why were you up? Like, what were you looking at? And she says, like, oh, well, I wanted to play with you, and also I kind of feel or felt that someone was outside. So the governess is like, what? Okay, okay. But she doesn't want to ask anything directly to Flora because she is 5 years old, and also, well, her parents passed away, the previous governess passed away, so she doesn't really want to go into details. And she doesn't want to ask Miles about Peter Quinn because there is probably not rumors, but like Miss Gross told her, like, Peter Quint, like the previous driver, he was all the time behind Miles. Like probably, maybe, like something weird could happen. Or, like Peter Quint could have done something to Miles. So that's why the governess doesn't want to ask directly to Miles. Finally, like in these chapters, before continuing with the story, we have that the governess it's not super scared, but she's overthinking. She's really, really overthinking about the previous governess, about Peter Quinn, about why she doesn't have enough information, like like why the little kids are acting that they don't know anything, but probably they know. And one night again, like this lady saw or kind of felt something outside. So she, like approached to the window. She saw through the window and she saw that Miles was outside. So far, that is the story. I know it was a very long introduction, but it is just a reminder of what is happening and what happened in previous chapters. So after all this introduction, guys, let's just begin with our session today. As I commented to you at the beginning of this video, today we will discuss chapters from 11 to 15. So before that, we just remember what happened in previous chapters. Let's remember that in chapter number 10, we have the governess who, it's night, and then she kind of has this feeling inside of her that something will happen. She goes to check everything, and before going to Miles' room, she kind of felt like, oh no, he's sleeping, I shouldn't bother him. But when she passes Miles' room and she approached to a window and she looked at it, she looked through the window, she saw Miles, that he was in the garden. So that is what happened in chapter number 10. And let's just start with chapter number 11. I'm already sharing my screen so you can see it. And here we have that right away. The governess couldn't say anything to the governess. Every time the governess was trying to tell Mrs. Gross, about what happened with Miles the night before, they couldn't talk. Because it seems that Flora and Miles, they were watching them. And every time they were, like about to say something, the little kids were like, hey, hi, hey. So they couldn't talk. And later on, we have the conversation about what happened with Miles at night. And then we have here that, the governess asked him like, hey, what are you doing here? And Miles was simply saying like, hey, I'm a bad boy. I wanted to be a bad boy. So that's it. He didn't want to say anything else, but just that. Here you have it, here. Think for a change. Think me for a change bad. For a change, it is para variar. So we have an expression here. And, well, that's it. It says at midnight, when I am bad, I'm bad. So if I want to be a bad boy, I will be out of bed at midnight, even later. So that's it. So it says, he literally blooms up from this exploit that he could afford radiantly to assent. How otherwise should I have been bad enough? He asked. Then, after another embrace, the incident and our interview closed on my recognition of all the reserves of goodness that for his joke he had been able to draw upon. So she's suspicious about something. And that is what happened in chapter 11. The governess is trying to tell Mrs. Gross about what happened. And then we have the conversation that the governess and Miles had that night when she found it outside. That simply Miles wanted to be a bad boy. So we continue, and in chapter number 12, we have here, Mrs. Gross and the governess, finally they are talking, and the governess is telling everything to to Mrs. Gross, like, hey, this happened with kids, I have these ideas, like now Miles is a troublemaker, like I don't know what to do, but I know that these two people, like Peter Quinn and Miss Jessel are after the boys, so we need to help them. And Mrs. Gross says like, okay, we need to help them, but more than you and me, we need to call his uncle. So in this case, it says, like, oh, the part of little darlings. So just one second. In this part, oh yeah, we have, like here, that says that probably Miss Jessel was Peter Quinn's lover. So probably that's why they are after them. But who knows? At the very end, we don't have enough information. However, like as I commented to you, Mrs. Rose and the governess, they want to help the kids. And it says that the only solution is that their uncle needs to know. So it says here, she had been scanning the distance, but she now dropped on me a foolish face. You, miss, you have to call him. It says, by writing to him that his house is poisoned and his little nephew and niece mad? But if they are, miss, and if I am myself, you mean that charming news to be sent with him by a governess whose prime undertaking was to give him no worry. Remember that one of the conditions to accept the job, it was that she cannot bother the headmaster under any circumstances. So here, like that is the conversation we have. And then, like at the end it says, you have to do whatever you need to do in order to take him or to bring him here. And you are the chosen one. So yes or yes, you need to think about something in order to, like bring him here. It says, like, we ought to be here, he ought to help. I quickly rose and think I must have shown her a queerer face than ever yet. Remember that queer, it will be strange, off. You see me asking him for a visit? So it says like, yes, you have to ask him for a visit. So we have here, like chapter number 12. And then in chapter number 13, we start having like other kind of information. For example, in this chapter we have as well, we continue having monologues with what the governess is thinking about all this situation. Also, it says that time passes by, that summer is arriving to an end, the autumn is starting, like everything's very calm, very quiet. Like after the experiences she had, nothing has happened. However, it says here that all the time she is expecting to happen something, like she recognized the sensation, she recognized the place, she recognized like a lot of signs, but nothing happened. So here we have that. And then it says, well, I will just read, like this part. It says, since the light brushed that second night on the upper landing of the presence of a woman at the foot of the stair, I had seen nothing, whether in or out the house. Oh yeah, she saw someone in the stairs. So that's why, she's explaining here. It says, the summer had come, the summer had gone. So, like it was already autumn. And then it says, the autumn had dropped upon Bly and had blown out half of lights. The place, with its grey sky and withered garlands, its bare space and scattered dead leaves, was unspeakable impressions of the kind. It says, was like a theater after the performance, all strewn with crumpled playbills. There were exactly states of air, conditions of sound, of stillness, unspeakable impressions of the kind of ministering moment that brought back to me long enough to catch it. The feeling of the medium in which that June evening out of doors I had my first sight of Queen, and in which too at those other instants I had, after seeing him through the window, looked for him in vain in the circle of the shrubbery. Shrubbery will be the bushes. I recognize the signs, the portents, I recognize the moment, the spot, but they remain unaccompanied and empty, and I continue unmolested. If unmolested, one could call a young woman whose sensibility have in the most extraordinary fashion not declined but deepened. So, like, she is very sensitive to all these signs. She is like, oh, in that place I saw that guy. Oh, like that day it was this dark. All this, all that. So she is, like, more conscious about what could happen, but nothing is happening. So she's still, like, thinking about what Mrs. Groves told her about bringing their uncle to the house. And, well, in this part we have, let me see, because there is a part when the governess has a conversation with Miles, and that is a very interesting conversation, but I don't know if it is in the chapter or in the next one, but I will just read this little part. So it says, I chattered more than ever, going on volubly enough till one of our prodigious palpable hushes occurred. Hushes, it will be hush or a secret. I can tell them nothing else. The strange dizzy leap or swim, I try for terms, into a stillness, a pause of life that had nothing to do with the more or less noise at the moment we may be engaged in making, and that I could hear through any deepened exhilaration or quickened recitation or louder strum of piano. Then it was that the others, the outsiders, were there. So in this case, in this part, she just continued thinking about the previous experiences she had, and that right now nothing is happening. But remember that in previous chapters, we know that the governess has the responsibility and also the feelings that she is taking care of two children. So she is like probably the hero of the story. She needs to save them. So she is having these kind of contradictory thoughts because she's also scared. And even though she knows that she cannot tell anything to their uncle, she is trying to find a way in order to tell him everything, like everything what is happening in Bly, in the house with the kids. So here, I think adorable, with exasperation, strain and understood, it was like chance, it came with a rush. Well, yes, in this case, there's nothing, but the next chapter is getting good. Because this is a chapter where the conversation between Miles and the governess is happening. So it says that it was, like a Sunday morning, and they were going to the church. So in their way to the church, there were Flora, Mrs. Groves, Miles, and the governess. They were walking, but the governess was walking alone, and suddenly Miles grabbed her arm, and they started, like walking together. And Miles was like, hey, when I am going, when I am going back to school, I want to come back. I want to continue, like study. I don't like this routine anymore. And the governess, well, she doesn't have any answer, really, because he was rejected, and she doesn't even know why. So she's trying to answer the questions, but, like, she's going, one second. She's going around the bushes. That was the expression I was looking for. So she just going around the bushes, because at the end it's like, oh, come on, but like you are spending time with a lady. And Miles is like, oh yeah, but it's the same lady, always. And the governess is like, well, but you also have your sister, don't you? And he's like, yeah, but it's not the same. I want to live the life. I want, to experience. I want to go outside. And at the end, the governess is like, hey, were you happy at school? like, were you very happy at school? And Miles is like, well, I'm happy anywhere. I just want to be outside. I don't want to be here anymore. So, Miles says, if you are not doing anything, I will call my uncle by myself and I will tell him, to take me out of here. So we have here that it says, here, yes, if you didn't, he looked while I waited at the graves. Well, you know what? But he didn't move. Oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't a question. Well, you know what? But he didn't move, and he presently produced something that made me drop straight down on the stone slab, as if suddenly to rest. Does my uncle think what you think? I murkily rested. How do you think? Or how do you know what I think? Oh, well, of course, I don't, for it strikes me you never tell me. But I mean, does he know? Know what, Miles? Why, the way I'm going on. So I perceived quickly enough that I could make to this inquiry no answer that would to involve something of a sacrifice of my employer. Yet it appeared to me that we were all, at Blythe, sufficiently sacrificed to make that venial. I don't think your uncle much cares. Miles on this stood looking at me. Then, don't you think he can be made to? In what way? By his coming down. So the governess is like, but who will bring him here? And he says like, I will. So as I told you, before in previous chapters, we know that the governess, she is trying to call the headmaster in order, well, not to call, to call him to go, to ask him to go. And, in the chapter, we know that the reason why Miles is being rebel is just because he's bored of being in the same place, with the same routine, with the same people. He wants to be outside. And that, if the governess is not doing anything, he will do something. So that is so far what happened in chapter 14. So in chapter number 15, we have that, they were discussing in the churchyard, that it will be the atrium. And at some point after, telling the governess, I will bring my uncle here, he left. He entered to the church. And the governess, she's in shock. She doesn't know what to think, what to answer, what to tell him. So she just, stood there. The time passes by, and when she reacted, it was already late for, arriving to the church. So she decided not to go to the church. She continued, walking and thinking, what I will do, it says. Either you clear up with my guardian the mystery of this interruption of my studies, or you cease to expect me to lead with you a life that is unnatural for a boy. Because, kind of something, Miles is telling the governess that he knows there are ghosts in the house. So that is unnatural for boys, for children. So that's why he's like, or you are doing something, or I will do it by myself. And she's, thinking, how? What can I do? How can I help them? And this and moreover. And, while she is continue thinking, it's already late. So she said, I will just come back. She is walking again, it says, I got so far as the immediate moment was concerned away, I came straight out of the churchyard, the churchyard, the atrium, and thinking hard, retraced my steps through the park. It seems to me by the time I reached the house, I had made up my mind and I would fly. The Sunday stillness both approaches and of the interior in which I met no one fairly excited me with a sense of opportunity. So she is, probably with a cold head. She already thought about what she can do or she could do. And then when she arrived to the house, it says that, seated on my own table in clear noonday light, so it was, noon, there was sunlight everywhere, I saw a person whom, without my previous experience, I should have taken at the first blush for some housemaid who might have stayed at home to look after the place, and who, availing herself of rare relief from observation and of the schoolroom table and my pens, ink, and paper, had applied herself to the considerable effort of a letter to her sweetheart. So it says that, she entered to a room, to the schoolroom, and she saw a woman who was in the desk. And at the very beginning, she confused her with a housemaid who probably took her, her stuff, paper and ink in order to write a letter to her lover. But, it says, there was an effort in the way that while her arms and my pens, ink, and paper had applied herself to the considerable effort, it says, there was an effort in the way that while her arms rested on the table, her hands with evident weariness supported her head. But at the moment I took these, I had already become aware that in spite of my entrance, her attitude strangely persisted. Then it was, with the very act of its announcing itself, that her identity flared up in a change of posture. She rose, not as if she had heard me, but it was an indescribable grand melancholy of indifference and detachment, and within a dozen feet of me stood there as my vile predecessor. Dishonor and tragic, she was all before me. But even as I fixed and for memory secure it, the awful image passed away. Dark as midnight, in her black dress, her haggard beauty, and her unutterable woe, she had looked at me long enough to appear to say that her right to sit at my table was as good as mine to sit at hers. While this instant lasted, indeed, I had the extraordinary chill of feeling that it was I had the extraordinary chill of feeling that it was I who was the intruder. It was, as I will protest against it, that actually addressing her. You terrible, miserable woman, I heard myself break into a sound that by the open door rang through the long passage and the empty house. She looked at me as if she heard me, but I had recovered myself and cleared the air. There was nothing in the room the next minute but the sunshine and a sense that I must stay. So, after the time passes by and she didn't have any encounter with any of the ghosts, because, the author is not mentioning ghosts, but these two presences, well, finally, after the conversation she had with Miles, she arrived to the house, she arrived to the schoolroom, to her desk, and she saw a woman. The woman is, writing, but at some moment she moved, and the movements and the expression, they are looking at each other, and, well, maybe the look or maybe, the attitude is like, well, this is my place too. And the governess screams something like, you terrible, miserable woman. But, at the moment she is looking at her again, she's not there anymore. And that's it, guys. That will be it for chapter 15. The next one, it will be chapter 16. So far, that is what is happening in the story. And, well, it's getting ready. We are in a little bit more than half of the book. So the next two sessions, we will know how the story ends. It's getting, to the point. We will just arrive to the conclusion. So without anything else to say for the moment, guys, see you this Thursday for our discussion. And meanwhile, continue having an excellent reading. Thank you so much, guys. See you later.